Certainly the police will be able to make good use of television. Perhaps in your own home some evening.
This is the City Detective Bureau broadcasting and telecasting today's list of wanted persons. Notify the police immediately if you see this face. He is wanted for murder.
And it's just one of the possibilities in television. Oh, there's a flock of others. Imagine what could happen to program interludes. All the various station announcements. Maybe they'd go something like this.
Oh, thanks for the memory of rainy afternoon.
Life could be a dream. Life could be a dream. Do, shaboom.
Life could be a dream. Shaboom. If I could take you up in paradise above. Shaboom. If you would tell me I'm the only one that you love.
Life could be a dream. Sweetheart, hello, hello again. Shaboom, and over we meet again. Boom, boom.
Hey-dong, ding-dong,
Life could be a dream. If only all my precious plans would come true. If you would let me spend my whole life loving you.
Life could be a dream, sweetheart. Shaboom.
Stepping along with television. We certainly stepped in a hurry just now, all the way from Waukesha, Wisconsin, to a television studio in New York. Here are the lights, the cameras, the sound equipment, all typical of what you'd see at any of the several television broadcasting companies. Even so, it's a long, long way to Waukesha. How can these dancers leap like a sunbeam across 800 miles of hills and lakes and prairies? Well, let's see for ourselves. Starting in a New York studio, let's follow their performance along a pathway that turns a large chunk of our country into one tremendous stage. Of course, catch the action in terms of light and shade. They then translate it into electrical impulses which pass through these small cables on the floor. These cables lead to the control room overlooking the studio. Here we see technical men adjusting the television image. From this point on, the program is channeled into Bell System facilities, which now take over to carry the program on its journey. Riding on local telephone company lines, the program speeds underground to a telecasting tower and on to the thousands of television sets throughout the metropolitan area. All at the same time, however, it is speeding underground to a telephone communications building many blocks away. Ah, here are the dancers again. We'll be seeing them quite often in other Bell System control rooms as we follow the program all the way to that living room in Waukesha, Wisconsin. A careful check on the image and the music, and we're really on our way. Underground, the program travels on a coaxial cable highway. Then, all in the twinkling of an eye, it drops off in Philadelphia. Here in the telephone building, we hurry along to another control room where we again check in on the dancers. Incidentally, a line takes the program to the top of a television tower, where it is telecast locally. But in the meantime, and far quicker than it takes to tell it, it speeds on its way to Pittsburgh. Here, let's pause for a moment just to watch the dancers and listen to the music. But now let's resume our journey westward, on to Cleveland and Toledo and Chicago. Here in Chicago, our coaxial cable highway takes us once more to the control room of a telephone building, and sure enough, the dancers are right here with us. This lady might almost have stepped right out of a famous poem. A dancing shape, an image gay, to haunt, to startle, and waylay. Up to now, the program has traveled on coaxial cable. New York to Chicago, all in a flash. Now in Chicago, we make an instant shift to another Bell System means of communication known as radio relay. Let's interrupt our journey here on the top of a telephone building in Chicago while we see what this radio relay is all about. This square-faced giant horn is an antenna for sending a special kind of radio wave. This antenna concentrates the radio waves into a very narrow beam, aimed straight as a rifle shot to a receiving tower. On top of this tower, a similar horn captures the signals and channels them through a hollow metal pipe to a series of amplifiers which build up their power. Restored to normal strength, the signals are now passed on through a sending antenna to a second radio relay tower. Here then, in essence, is what is known as radio relay. Incidentally, our program from New York could have come by radio relay instead of by coaxial cable. But let's return now to our television program as it's being beamed from the top of a telephone building in Chicago. It can go west to Kansas City and Omaha, or to resume our journey, it's an easy trip northward to Milwaukee and to a receiving antenna on top of the local telephone building. Now down through the building to the control room, and what do you know? The dancers again, and not the least bit tired from their long journey. But naturally, they came here almost on the wings of light. And now they simply hop on a local telephone cable, zip over to a television station, and jump out in all directions. Among the many places they land, guess where? Waukesha, of course. Now it's easy. They're picked up on a television antenna on a certain house, and the trip from the New York studio is finished. The time, just about the 200th part of a second.
I'll answer it, Mother. I think it's Jack. Hello? Is that you, Jack?
Jack? Who's Jack? This is your granddad calling from Boston.
Grandpa? How wonderful. Mother, it's Gramps. Oh, Grandpa, you'll never guess what we're doing. We're watching a television program coming all the way from New York. Isn't that super?
Oh, I don't know. How about me talking to you all the way from Boston?
Oh, but Grandpa, this is really something.
Listen, honey, after what I've seen in the last 50 years, nothing surprises me anymore.
50 years. Yes, a lot has happened since Granddad, as a little boy, first jangled an old-fashioned telephone. In those days, it was a great event to talk on the telephone at all, let alone from Boston to Waukesha, Wisconsin. Then from his window in Boston, he saw the sky full of wires. Later on, the wires began to disappear into cables not much bigger than a man's wrist, carrying more conversations to more and more places, until finally, the long-distance network of today came into being. In the same way, Grandpa saw wires for carrying radio programs grow from nothing, only 25 years ago, to the present nationwide special network over which the Bell system regularly carries programs to more than 1,000 local stations owned by the broadcasting companies. Recently, Grandpa has been hearing a lot about coaxial cable and radio relay, how they're good for carrying both conversations and television programs. Nothing surprises Granddad anymore. So if he should look at a map of Bell System television networks as they are today, he'd probably tell you it's just history repeating itself. Even now, more than 40 cities are connected on a growing network of radio relay and coaxial cable television channels, making it possible for millions of people to be eyewitnesses of scenes more than 1,500 miles away. What's more, the Bell system will keep on stepping along with television as fast as the requirements of the television industry are clearly demonstrated. Considering Bell system history, Grandpa would say it's no pipe dream. It's just plain logical.
You're watching Sleepcore. Pleasant dreams.
Music, color, and excitement. Who doesn't enjoy a football game? That is, if you're one of the lucky ones who can get in. If you're not, well, it's just too bad. But wait a minute. There may be another answer. Yes, thanks to television, that marvel of modern science, even our unfortunate friend and millions of other people can sit back in the comfort of their own homes and enjoy every thrill of the game with no struggle for tickets. Out at the stadium, the television cameramen are seeing to it that you can follow every detail of the game. They're out there on the sidelines, following every important piece of action. Cables connect the cameras with the mobile units which are parked outside the stadium. And from these trucks, the scenes covered by the cameras are relayed to the main television transmitter. Now let's see what a television studio looks like. It's a mighty busy place when a broadcast is being made from the studio. Great banks of lights swivel down to flood the scene. Cameramen wheel in and out to pick up the action from the angles directed by the director. To keep the action continuous while the costumes are changed and while different sets are being readied, or to show an action which could not take place on a small stage, Portions of some broadcasts are made by projecting prepared motion picture film right into a television camera. Using the same actors and identical sets, the motion pictures are made in advance. The electrician, the cameraman, the studio manager, and the actors are all controlled by the director. His job is to see that the broadcast proceeds smoothly and without breaks, because the picture on the television screen must be continuous.
Camera 1, move in close on the girl.
Television and motion pictures are alike because in both, a series of still pictures is flashed rapidly before your eyes, so rapidly that the memory of each picture lingers long enough so that it blends with the next picture and the object of the picture appears to move. And now let's see what makes a picture a picture. Look closely at this one. Closer still. Let's use a magnifying glass. Here we see that the picture is really made up of thousands of tiny dots arranged very close together. But normally our eyes don't notice the dots, especially when the picture is being moved. This fact helps to make television and motion pictures possible. Television is simply a way of sending these dots from a transmitting station and putting them together to make a picture on the screen of a receiving set. Here's the way it works. Inside the television camera is a magic electric eye called the iconoscope, one of the most important parts of which is this sensitive plate called a mosaic. It is a rectangular piece of mica covered with billions of tiny photoelectric cells arranged something like this. The scenes being televised go through the camera lens and fall on the photoelectric cells. Some of the cells receive lots of light, others very little. Each cell, according to how much light it gets, builds up a corresponding electrical charge. These charges collectively make up an electrical image on the mosaic. These cells with their electrical charges are scanned by a stream of electrons. The scanning beam skips every other line and returns to scan the remainder of the picture, completing 30 pictures a second. Each picture is composed of 525 individual scanning lines. An electrical impulse is released each time this stream covers a group of the photoelectric cells. Each separate impulse travels from the sensitive plate of the iconoscope in sequence over wires to the transmitting station, where it is then sent out into space to be picked up by aerials connected to television receivers. Here, the electrical impulses are carried to another magic tube called the kinescope and are used to control another stream of electrons which bombard the face of the kinescope, which is really the viewing screen. When the beam strikes this fluorescent screen, each electrical impulse is changed back into a spot of light. In other words, each spot of light picked up by the mosaic of tiny photoelectric cells in the television camera creates a corresponding spot of light on the receiving screen. It moves back and forth so rapidly, actually more than 2.5 miles per second, that a complete still picture is formed almost immediately. The quick succession of 30 pictures a second produces the apparent motion. That is why the pictures we see on the screen of our television receiver seem to move. Television has come of age. Here, for instance, is a reproduction of one of the first images received on a television screen. Compare that crude picture with these of today, and you can judge for yourself how far along the road to perfection television has traveled. It is bringing entertainment to millions, and through its magic, we are able to enjoy a combination of radio, motion pictures, and the stage. Actually, some television patents were issued several years before the first automobile was built. But because of many technical difficulties that had to be overcome, its development was much slower. Just as the modern automobile is the result of years of research, scientific engineering, and testing by countless miles of actual use, Television is the result of endless experiments and new discoveries by patient scientists toiling in their laboratories. It has been developed just as the easy riding qualities of today's automobiles were developed by progress through constant improvement. Today we sit back in roomy, comfortably cushioned seats in steel bodies, insulated against heat and cold and noise, surrounded by windows of crystal clear glass, controlling the ventilation to our needs, riding smoothly over all kinds of roads in luxury undreamed of a few short years ago. Of course, television isn't yet ready to perform miracles like this, but who knows what the future holds. It's fun guessing, though.
You're watching Sleepcore, media for insomnia.
What's tomorrow going to be like? What kind of world are we going to live in when we get our permanent furloughs? Super-speed highways? Plastic Packards? Streamlined cities? What does the future hold in store for us? To get a glimpse of that future, Army-Navy Screen Magazine presents a new department, Tomorrow, previewing our post-war world, the job opportunities, the new fields ahead. For the first in our Tomorrow series, let's look into a brand new development. Television. Here's an expert with the lowdown on the inside facts. Dr. Orestes Caldwell, editor of Electronic Industries and former member of the Federal Communications Commission.
I'm glad to have this opportunity to speak to you men and women in the service of America. I believe in this world to come. I think it's going to be a pretty good world. But I've been asked to tell you about television, so I'll trim the philosophizing. Television is most certainly here to stay. It's going to brighten the world of your home. But more important to many of you, it's going to create a lot of new jobs. Now, none of us like crystal gazing, so let's take a look at what is actually happening now. 9 experimental telecasting studios are already operating, with pre-war equipment and skeleton staffs. While the electronic industry is busy finishing its war job, a handful of people, girls, ex-vets, older men, are keeping the television field alive, experimenting, ironing out kinks, but proving that television will definitely be part of American life when the go-ahead comes. Sight teamed up with sound to bring the world to your easy chair. Telecasting studios will be a combination of Broadway and Hollywood, and you'll get the best of both for the price of your television set and a few cents worth of electricity. And outside the studios, mobile televising units, portable stations on wheels, are now experimenting with remote pickups, getting primed to bring you on-the-spot news and history in the making. When television networks are formed, you will have a direct wire to every place a television camera can be set up. A world of sports at your fingertips.
They're off. That's interpreter number 2 right in front. And the field races past the stand with interpreter on top, low man in second place moving up on the outside.
Mayor LaGuardia pitches the first ball. Red Ruffing is taking his time, and it's a hit.
There's a capacity crowd here at Madison Square Garden tonight to witness the semifinals of the Golden Glove.
Telecasting is done on a limited schedule now. But tomorrow, you will have a permanent ringside seat everywhere from Madison Square Garden to the House of Congress. You'll see transmitted by television, newsreels, and super Hollywood productions. Plays and musicals, command performances in your own living room. These men at Howland General Hospital, where there are 100 sets, can tell you television is here to stay. Even now, without the technical improvements that will come after the war, the television picture has the quality of a good home movie. The pre-war models in use today have a small screen, but here's a practical working model with a 16 by 22-inch screen that goes into production just about the time you're being measured for civvies.
This is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company. WNBT, New York.
Well, that gives you a pretty general idea of what's happening. Now let's see how television works. You're going to find a new type of aerial against the skyline of America when you return. It will be up high because television waves, like light rays, don't bend and are stopped by the horizon. So the higher the aerial, the farther the waves travel. But first, what is a television wave? As you know, all objects reflect light, some more, some less, depending on their color. The white jacket of these fencers is reflecting more light than their dark trousers. The television camera lens, like an ordinary camera, picks up these differences in light and shadow. Only instead of film behind the lens, we have the iconoscope, familiarly known as Ike. The camera plate of the iconoscope is made up of millions of sensitive electric eyes. These eyes pick up electric impulses from the object being televised and form a picture which is then transmitted as separate electric impulses from the camera plate to the receiver screen. There, the impulses are converted back to pinpoints of light and shadow to reform the picture on the screen. Here, the process is slowed down for you. Actually, the impulses travel from the camera to the receiving set at the rate of 4 million impulses a second, forming the picture in motion. Fantastic. But our children will grow up with this miracle enriching their lives and giving them a new understanding of the whole world.
Gosh.
By harnessing electrons and vacuum tubes, our research scientists, backed by American industry and manufacturing skill, have developed this new means of communication to the point where it promises to become a post-war billion-dollar industry which can serve our nation and the world in new and wonderful ways. Let's listen to a man who knows. He is one of the great leaders in the world of electronics, Brigadier General Sarnoff, President of the Radio Corporation of America.
When the First World War ended, it was my good fortune and privilege to play a part in the launching and subsequent development of a new industry called broadcasting. There were some who said it had great promise. There were others who said that it was a noisy, sputtering gadget, a passing fancy. The rest, you know. Now let us see what possibilities exist for television once the war ends.
Here are the possibilities. In the manufacturing field, 60,000 men and women will be needed to make the first sets, which will retail for about $200, with 18 million Americans ready to buy them. Help wanted. Electronic experts, assemblers, wiremen, machinists, finishers, testing personnel, sheet metal workers, drill press operators, spot welders. Television is just made to order for GIs with radio and radar experience. 85,000 maintenance men are going to be needed to install and service the 30 million sets expected to be sold within the first 10 years of full-scale production. And in the distribution end of the business, 135,000 jobs are going to open up in the new shops and sales organizations that will supply the huge consumer demand. All in all, 300,000 well-paying jobs are expected to be created by television within 5 years after the new industry really gets rolling. Well, that's a comprehensive view of the industrial picture. Now what about television production? Here's a man who qualifies as an expert on that subject. Meet Mr. Gilbert Seldes, head of production of the Columbia Broadcasting System.
They tell me that a great many of you may be interested in jobs in television production. Well, I think you're entitled to the hard, solid facts in the case. As of spring 1945, we are employing 62 people. They work a full week to put on 4 hours of programs on the air. That doesn't mean 4 hours a day, it means 4 hours a week. If we were on the air 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, we'd need at least 7 times as many people, in the neighborhood of 500. And we're only one studio. There are 900 radio broadcasting stations in the United States today. And it's anybody's guess how many television stations are going to spring up. We can just be sure that the faster we deliver good entertainment and good pictures, the more jobs we're going to create. And there will be a lot of jobs. You compare television with radio, for instance. Here is a radio newscaster on the air. One man in the studio, one in the control room. And here is a television newscast. And a lot of work went into it before it got this far. Now as for the movies. Here is just a medium colossal production underway. Yes, it takes a lot of people and many months to make one. Yet commercial television will probably use more material in 1 week than all the studios in Hollywood turn out in a year. And finally, in the theater, you produce a show, it may run for years. In television, every night is opening night and closing night too. Now let's look at some specific television jobs. Some of them you'll see come from radio, movies, and the theater. Some are new. Here are 2 men doing a job never heard of before. They are riding the Ike. Shaders and switchers in the control room see that the pictures come out right. At the transmitter, they see that they get out on the air. And electronic experts keep it all functioning. You men with radio and radar training are only a hop, skip, and jump from the industry's needs. Then there will be modifications of established professions. Writers, directors, producers, scenic designers, and just to show you wax, waves, and spars that this isn't exclusively a man's world, there'll be costume designing and stage management. Then behind the scenes, makeup, props, electricians, and almost everything else from carpenters to model makers. But the great thing to remember is that we've just begun to discover the possibilities of television. And these are only a few of the jobs that already exist. Many more are bound to develop as we go on.
That's it. Television. And some interesting jobs which some of you may be qualified for. But more than that, television can be the window to the whole world. A medium through which the United Nations can better understand each other and live together in the world of tomorrow.